everyone, and welcome to another riveting edition of Under the Floorboards, where we laugh at the creatures that go bump in the night. I am your host, John, joined as always by my beautiful co-host, Eric. How are you this week?
Dude, I'm so stoked.
I know. I've been stoked about this episode for a little while now. But keeping it clean every week. Super excited to announce our guest this week, special effects aficionado and legend, Mr. Deryk Wehrley. Let's give it up. I will put sound claps in later. How's it going, brother?
It's going good. So happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, dude, super stoked to have you on the show because you're also our first special effects person, which I'm really excited to talk to you about. Because I think what you do is so fucking fascinating. Like, I think it's so like it will, especially like in the indie horror world, like it's such a make or break thing, you know? Like,
absolutely.
With the movie that we're going to talk about today, they kind of leveraged a lot of that on cinematography and like camera angles to kind of like make it so they didn't have to do a lot of that, which is understandable. And the movie's still great, but we've seen you make it so people are getting like disemboweled and their fucking heads ripped off and like all of this crazy shit. So really excited to talk to you about a lot of that in the Patreon a little bit later.
Totally.
But really excited to have you on the show, Deryk. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, yeah, I'm just a silly little guy from Ohio. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say. Yeah, I'm a special effects makeup artist working in the indie world. You guys have talked a little bit about one of the films I worked on being Late Checkout, which is your background I see there, and love that poster. I won the award for the special effects and the award show that you guys did a while back. That was my first time winning an award, which was super awesome. So that was really cool.
Against some pretty stiff competition too.
Dude, it was. That was tight competition on that one. And honestly, when you guys told me I won, I was like, oh, so rad. So,
is that the exact noise
cool.
You made?
I did. No, okay. It was a lot more high pitched, and I was naked. It was weird. But yeah, no, that was exciting. And you know, it's like you said, I grew up with this stuff, and getting to do it all the time is such an incredible privilege, you know. And even though this movie we're about to talk to does not have a ton of that going on, it still is a movie that is very near and dear to my heart. And when I mentioned doing it with you guys, I was honestly, all the movies I picked out, I was like, I love all these, but I really hope he picks this one. So I'm very, very excited about it.
Well, it was funny too, because like when you sent me the list, I guess that was just like kismet, because I was just like, I wanted to do this movie so bad. I love this movie so much.
No, dude, no joke. I think now when I don't say this lightly, this is genuinely in my top 5 favorite movies of all time. End of story, be all end all. It literally means a lot to me, and I think this is the 4th or 5th time I've been on a podcast talking about it. No joke. Like, I talk about this movie a lot. Like, I used to cosplay as the character from it. I own original art from the comic book series on my wall right now.
That's
like,
so awesome,
dude. It's insane. So yeah, it's a very special movie for me, and I quote it to the point where like the people who get it. Those who don't think I'm just hilarious. And then so it's just it is what it is. But yeah, I absolutely love this movie. So
quick little question about the comic book series, because I did see that online. Yes. Is this a prequel to the movie, or does this take place after the movie?
So okay, so I was never able to get a hold of the comics when they first came out, and now they're like outrageously expensive. But the artist who did it, Nathan Milliner, helped them create like an omnibus that has all 5 issues in one hardbound, and that was just released like last year.
Cool. Holy shit.
So I need to buy that so I can finally read through it. But they took the script for the sequel for this movie and then made it into the comic series. So it kind of acts as like a prequel and sequel at the same time, from my understanding. So I guess now would be a good time to say what it is, because everyone who's listening is gonna be like, "Oh my god, what is it? What is it?"
Yeah. So Deryk, tell us your choice.
So my choice was the incredibly underrated and undoubtedly 10 out of 10 perfect film, Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Woo! Cheers!
Let's
Party
so
horn.
But yeah, fucking like we talked about it a little bit before we got on here. And guys, like if you haven't seen this movie, like first of all, I don't know what you've been doing with your lives, but this like
I can tell you what I've been doing with mine.
but also the big thing to me is like it's crazy, like you were saying, Deryk, that this movie is so underrated and it's so underappreciated. When Scream is like one of the biggest things is out there, and I love Wes Craven. I like Scream, but like you want to talk about something that's meta.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a different tier.
It's crazy to me. And just like you said, because I tell people all the time, I was like, how can you love a movie like Scream, but have never at least heard of Behind the Mask? Because it's like they exist in that same kind of world, but it's like Behind the Mask takes the meta of Scream and pushes it to like the nth degree in all the best ways. And sure, like it's not wildly original, and there are other movies that have taken this concept and done it like similarly, differently. But this is the one. And I feel like the biggest problem is that this movie came out the same year that Hatchet came out. And I feel like Hatchet, again, one of my favorite series of all time. Hatchet 2 is like in my top, I want to say 20 horror movies ever. And with all those neo slashers that were coming out with like Hatchet and Laid to Rest, and I feel like those both overshadowed this movie a lot. And I feel like, people wanted crazy over the top gore and tons of nudity and like crazy antics and stuff. And it's like
more Danielle Harris.
More, yeah. And it's like you do get some of that with this movie, but it's like this movie's a lot smarter than your typical slasher. And I feel like people didn't quite get it. But I feel like as people see it now and like reflect on it, look at like Fangoria and Bloody Disgusting, Rue Morgue, whenever they're like, here's the top 10 or 15 horror movies you overlooked or need to see. This is always on those lists every freaking time, and it's easily accessible. You can get it on Amazon physically or digitally. In fact, I'm going to plug myself for a second. When you look it up on Amazon and you see the artwork for the digital release, I did that artwork.
Fuck yeah.
Swear to God. The painting is like it's in a frame in my bedroom right now, but yeah, the artwork, and it's a shot of Leslie from like neck down to his waist holding the mask and holding the scythe. I did that artwork. So
that is so fucking
back
cool.
In like what was that, like 2016 or something like that? Like, yeah.
Jesus.
So it's I have had a lot of involvement with this film and its re-release and its lifetime, just because being a fan for so long, it's like I said, it means a lot to me, and it's one of my favorites. So it's I recommend it to everybody. It's on every list. When people are like, you need to give me a list of movies to see, and I'm like, this one, top 5, like make it happen. It's great. It's fun. It's perfect.
Well, before we get into the other shit, like, what was that like? How did you get in on being able to do the artwork for something like that? Because that's so fucking cool, dude.
So there was a point in time, and we'll get more into it in the Patreon bit, but there was a point in time in my life where I had stopped doing special effects makeup, and I was working a regular retail job, which is fine. I love retail. It's awesome. You love getting screamed at by people. It's great. So I was working a retail job. I was in management, and I was doing art on the side just for fun. And Christy Jett, who was like a publicist, she worked for Fright Rag. She was a publicist for Scott Glosserman for a while, reached out to me and said, hey, they're going to be doing a re-release of the film physically, and we want you to do the artwork for the cover since you've been a fan for so long. Well, they ended up hiring Joel Robinson to do the art for the Blu-ray instead, but then they asked me to do the art for the digital release. That way there could be a variety of artwork out there for the film. So you have the original key art, you had Nathan's artwork from the comics and the poster he did. Justin Osborne did his poster. Joel Robinson did the artwork for the Blu-ray through Scream Factory, and then I did the digital art. And Christy and I had been friends through Behind the Mask for years and years and years through the convention circuit. Wow. And I had drawn a picture of Leslie and had Scott and Nathan sign it at one point when I was in like middle school. And it's just like through the years, I mean, just like it had become such a big part. So she's like, for us to give back, we want you to do this. And I was like, awesome. So I painted it up. I sent it to them. They loved it. And it's like it's dated now. Like I'm a way better artist than what I was. I don't typically paint, so I mean, I like the painting. I think it's fun and minimalistic, but it's just it was cool that they even considered letting a fan do that, you know. And there was at one point because Christy was like really pushing me to get back into the film industry and doing effects again. And I didn't at the time, I didn't really have an interest in it. So she was like, "Hey, if I get you a job helping out with the effects on the sequel when we film it, would you want to do that?" And I'm like, "Is that even a question?" Like, that's like being like, "Hey, man, are you sure you like Iron Maiden?" I'm like, look at my shrine over here.
I prefer pre-Bruce Dickinson, you know, but
right. Oh my god. But she was like, you know, would you be interested? And I was like, totally. And it never came to fruition, as we all know. But yeah, I mean, I got to do that, and that was like they sent me a bunch of signed merchandise and stuff, and I mean, it was a whole thing, and it was really really cool getting to be a part of that legacy. And I say on every podcast I do that Scott and Nathan, if you're listening, hit me up, man. Let's make that sequel. I will do whatever it takes to make that shit happen. That is my dream project. So let's get it, man.
I will promote the shit out of that,
dude, for real. Because I have Nathan on Facebook. We chat from time to time, and it's like he's so down to earth, so rad. And I want to get him in a movie that I'm working on at some point. So
that dude went to fucking Juilliard.
I know, dude. He's like classically trained, like god tier actor, man. He needs to be in more stuff. So he's so great, and this movie shows his skill level is just out of control. Like it's out of this world. So yeah, like I said, man, it's a very important movie to me. One of my favorites. And again, I could not be more thrilled to be here and talking about it, and you know, hopefully opening some people's eyes to an overlooked gem. So yes, if y'all haven't seen this, drop what you're doing right now and watch this fucking movie, man. It is so good.
So typically on this show, we'll do our first impressions, which I'm getting a lot of your, and like, this is even like the first, this is just like you diving into the abyss that is the darkness of this fucking movie.
Lifetime impression.
So I'm going to actually start with Eric and myself. Usually we start with the guest, but I feel like I'm going to get a lot from you on this one. So I'm really excited to hear your first impression of this. But Eric, I know this was your first time watching it. So what was this like for you?
So I didn't know what I was in for. I had kind of just, it was one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, we're gonna watch this movie. You know, okay, let's find it. It's on Prime. Okay, cool, nice artwork. You know, and then I sit down, and you're 3 minutes in, and you're talking about we're setting, you know, Glen Echo, you know, and like the whole, and it's funny, and you're kind of already in the sense that this is going to be a very tongue-in-cheek kind of movie in a way. This is going to be a very self-aware movie, a very meta movie. And as the dialogue continues rolling in and the plot that develops and thickens and that kind of thing, you're sort of, I felt in my experience that I was completely hooked into this. These are the kind of movies that I enjoy in horror, where we can be scary and we can play on fear and that kind of thing, but we can do it in a playful and fun loving, and at times just like outrageously hilarious way. You know, I feel like horror, especially slashers, there's a lot of open space to explore different emotions and different tones in what you're trying to communicate. And this one handled that masterfully, in my opinion. When I walked in, he was John goes, how'd you like the movie? I was like, it was fucking great. It was, it's less about a first impression for me and more about, I would like to hear somebody's negative first impression of this movie, because I don't know what's not to like about it. And I'll just kind of leave it there.
Yeah.
Because aside from going scene by scene and talking about what I liked about this or this line of dialogue or whatever, I don't want to, you know.
So for myself, this was one of those films, and I talk about this a lot on the show, where like Netflix, for those of you who have it and were younger at one point in your life, would know that there was a time where Netflix was awesome. Like there was a point in time where like you could find it's like what Tubi does now with commercials. Like you could find all of these like super like B-list or indie horror films and like stuff that you never, like even stuff that you wouldn't find at Blockbuster and Movie Gallery and shit like that. And what I loved about this film was like I saw The Mask and I was like, I have to watch it. And I probably watched this probably like 2 or 3 years after it had come out. And I remember like sitting there and I had like this giant papasan in my room because like that's how I like to chill.
Because that's just a vibe.
It is a vibe, dude. I had a papasan couch at one point.
My God.
I lived in a sunroom. It was weird, but but anyways, I remember watching this for the first time, and it's probably still the only movie that I've ever seen that intentionally bounces between found footage and regular cinematography. And I think that's fucking brilliant. It's fucking brilliant because there's so much where like now you're just dropped into the movie and you're not just following like these people that are following somebody else. And they have like these super ironic fourth wall breaks and like there's so much that goes along with this film. And I was hooked in almost immediately. The big thing, honestly, for me was when they they start off the film and they're doing the whole like, oh well, all of these murders at Camp Crystal Lake and Haddonfield, Illinois, and on Elm Street, and like
The unholy trinity.
yeah, we hit the Holy Trinity, but we get to the scene where they're like stalking Kelly for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And where they're walking by and you see the girls in their dresses doing double dutch in the background.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this movie's 100% for me. Also,
Absolutely.
just to not sound creepy, guys, that's a Nightmare on Elm Street reference. That's not me just like watching little girls do double dutch in the park.
Double dutch.
Too
in this
late.
case is
Already
not a
called the
euphemism.
cops.
Oh fuck. Interpol. But I fucking love this film. Deryk, I was so excited that you picked this out.
Also, thank you, Deryk.
Yeah.
You are so welcome, dude. Like I said, and just to kind of bounce off what Eric said, the only negative thing I've ever heard anyone say about this movie, well, sorry, two things. One of them I get, and the other one I'm like, that's just a you problem. The one that I always say is a you problem is people saying like it's not that funny or I didn't get it. Like, okay, I think that's just it going over someone's head. And I can get that because the comedy's pretty fast paced in this, that if you're not like in it, you're not going to get it. Like, so, and I sort of get that, but like to be like, I don't know, that's a personal thing, but, I have
Parking
a friend,
was horrible. 2 stars.
it's just like, oh my God. But, I've had people tell me they wish it was gorier, and I'm like, same, because there's like hardly any gore in the movie at all. Like you see like one shot of like the heart with the post hole digger, and that's like really about it. Like there's just dribbles of blood everywhere else. And to me, knowing roundabouts what this movie is made for at that time that they made it, and hearing about some of the things that they went through while making it, I think it just came down to like budgeting and time, probably, because as an effects artist, effects are the last thing you shoot every day. It drives me fucking nuts, and it makes me want to smack the fuck out of people for it. But that's how it is, man. Because shit gets bloody. You got to clean up. You got to reset. So it is what it is. So I feel like that was a big part of that. But to like totally fault the movie and be like, oh, it sucks because there's no gore. It's like, bro, you know what? I'm gonna say it. Like fucking Hereditary was sick as hell, and there's like hardly any gore in that. So like, be mad about that, but the story and the camera work and just it's acted so well that it makes up for it in other places, I think. So it's like I said, I think one of the other movies I recommended was Hatchet 2, which is like the polar opposite, where it's just like mindless slaughter,
Pull out a rocket launcher,
like for real. Like it's crazy. So it's I understand those complaints, but I don't think anyone who's had those complaints has still said, but I didn't like it. They've always at the end been like, but it was good. I enjoyed it, so this is a yearly watch. I actually got my dad into this movie to where it's become one of his favorites. And every Halloween we get together and watch it together. So it's become like a tradition now, and it's like I said, everyone I've shown it to has really enjoyed it. So I was so happy to hear that this was Eric's first time seeing this and liked it. So that's like super awesome.
So obviously this was a movie that opened your eyes pretty fucking wide. So
Mhm.
what went through your head the very first time that you got to watch this? Because I know you said you were getting shit signed in middle school. So
Oh
obviously
yeah.
this was like pretty early
Yeah.
in
Extra
young
So
Deryk's horror repertoire.
so to give you guys an idea, I turned 30 this year. So I'm,
Welcome to it.
relatively young. Yeah, now my life's over. God.
We're
Uh,
all dying, dude.
but so when this came out in 2006. So depending on the time of year, I was either like finishing sixth grade or starting like seventh, so it was like that transitionary period. And is the same year Hatchet came out. And my cousin at the time was working for Anchor Bay as their acquisitions guy. And so he was the one purchasing these movies for release. And he knew I was into horror movies. So he sent me like this big box, and there was like hundreds of movies in this box. And it had like Hellraiser, Reanimator, and like Phantasm and all these classics, but it also had Laid to Rest, Hatchet, and Behind the Mask. And I'm looking at these three, and he's like, these are like neo slashers. They're like, he's like, these are the classics that like I grew up with, and he's like, these are the current classics that are coming out right now that you need to like. And I was, as soon as I saw the cover with that Leslie Vernon mask, I was like, dude, this is gonna be fucking nuts. And I had no idea what I was in for, but it's just like you see that mask, and like, this is gonna be scary as shit. And right from the get go, I'm like, okay, what is this? Because it's that jump between the theatrical and the found footage. And it grabbed me right away. Like I was cracking up at the stuff that was being said, but I was super invested in the characters and the story that as it was flowing. So it blew my mind, and I didn't know a movie like that could exist. Like I had seen Scream, but it was like, it's all right. Like I like Scream, but this was like on a whole nother level.
Mhm.
So it blew my mind. And as a young person who was wanting to get into film, it was just like, this is like a holy grail. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
this is the kind of movie I want to make. So it was just definitely like a very impressionable thing, especially the comedy in there, like definitely helped pave the way, for some of the stupid shit that I say. So it's
Gold stars all around to everybody who was like a part of the writing team.
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%. And like before we get into this, I do want to
Mhm,
say that like again, we keep referencing Scream for you guys because
mhm.
again, like that's the comparison of the meta.
This is the one that you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, here's the thing: was I saw Scream after I saw this. I had never seen
Wow.
Scream, so when I saw Scream, that's why I'm not a big fan of Scream. Was like I saw that and I was like, this is like a worse version of Behind the Mask.
Put that on a t-shirt.
It's just Leslie Vernon stabbing Ghostface in the back.
Straight up.
Oh man, but getting into it, and getting into some of the plot points of this, because again, this movie is so much fun. And the first thing that I put on this is it is a baller score to it. Like
Hmm.
the people who scored this movie did a fantastic job of just having like
Absolutely.
it's creepy when it's supposed to, it's rock and roll when it's supposed to, it's
Mhm.
cruising when it's supposed to, and it's great. And we meet what like because the opening scene is a scene that we'll actually come back to weirdly
Mhm.
enough because it opens up with Kelly, who is a character that is in high school and is supposed to be, they keep calling it the survivor girl, which I thought was
Mhm.
funny because like we already had the final girl
Mhm.
like moniker by this point. But I was like, oh, maybe they're just like not trying to, make a meta reference. And I'm like, they're literally talking about Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street,
Right.
fucking Crystal Lake. Which, we kind of get that first little glimpse of Leslie Vernon, and then we
Mhm.
go into this mockumentary style footage of having oh god, what's her name? Taylor,
Mhm.
Mhm.
who is like talking to the cameraman Todd and being like explaining, he's like she's like the shittiest true crime podcast ever because she's just like half of this shit is mystical. I'm pretty sure Freddy Krueger kills you in your dreams. And like if this is been which was crazy because like this film kind of puts everything as canon
Yeah.
to me.
That was
Like
the thing that struck me immediately was that we all exist in the same universe.
And that's kind of one of the things that like first grabbed me about it too, is I was like, okay, so this is like making it all, and we'll talk about it later with Scott Wilson's character because there's some fun fan theories behind that one. But it's like it it's kind of cool because he's like, we have Freddy versus Jason and stuff like that, but it just kind of legitimizes how all of this exists and it's all real. And it's like, okay, this is a real problem. It's kind of like the comic book series Hack Slash, like all the slashers and stuff like that, like they exist, they real. And people recognize, and that's like their version of like you said, true crime. And it kind of feels like, and I kind of wrote down here, it's like, it kind of kicks off like a MTV behind the music, but
Yeah.
like of the horror world, because they're like kind of like following the making of this person,
Mhm.
and right away giving you kind of the background behind Leslie Vernon. And it's already like a story that you totally buy into. It sounds like a campfire story or a local legend, and it's so well, conceived that I'm just like, okay, I buy it. Like, let's go.
And then the possessed boy was thrown over the waterfall, the heir apparent to the unholy trinity. It's so funny.
It's like, oh my God. It's
Yeah.
like, dude,
Yeah.
whoever came up with this, like, bravo, man.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I was actually in tears when they go to put the camera down after they're doing like the initial footage with everyone, and Taylor goes, "Did I sound okay? I really wasn't sure." And Todd just goes, "Yeah, it was tight."
Dude, some of Todd's lines in this, Todd and Doug, like, I want to
Yeah.
spin off with just those two guys too, because they're fucking hilarious through that whole
Only
movie.
one of them can be
She's
in it,
like,
unfortunately.
what was it like? Not to Diane Sawyer. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
it's oh my God,
She like
because
fluffs
it's like
her hair.
because that if you've ever worked on like a podcast like this, when you're not recording the shit that you say, and it's like, but they're catching it in this. If you've ever worked on a movie, what's being said behind the scenes, it gives it that layer. This movie's like an onion with just the layers of shit going on, dude. It's oh my God.
I
Yeah,
have to
so
tell
funny.
people all the time, I'm not recording right now. You can say whatever you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we almost immediately go into the house, right? Like you
Mhm.
were saying, we have like the introduction, we give the folklore tale of Leslie Vernon, and we meet Leslie outside of his house because like Taylor's like knocking on the door and Taylor like appears outside. He's just like, hey,
And now I'm over here.
yeah, now I'm over here. Which was great because like like what
It was like that Michael Jackson Super Bowl performance where he's coming out of multiple.
Yes, and he's like popping
You
up.
know what
and like this is like I love jovial killers like this. Like it feels very Art the Clown because he's like, no, I'm just fucking with you.
Yeah.
Like it's fine.
Absolutely.
But
He has a lot of humor to him with like everything he says and does. And it's just like through the whole movie, like not jumping too far ahead, but it's like you start to question, like, is this guy for real? Like he's way too funny and having too much fun with this, that there's no way this guy is going to become some kind of crazy monster. But boy, howdy does he. But it's just like through this first interaction, you're like, did they find this guy on Craigslist? Like, what is this? Because
Yeah,
he's just
'cause
so chill.
he feels like he takes his aunt to pick strawberries. Like
Absolutely.
We're making pie later.
And they go inside. He's like sorting through his mail and like talking about his like pet turtles and shit. And it's like
Church and Zoe.
Church and Zoe. They're little sweeties. Well, not him, but yeah, you could
He
pet
bites.
him. It's like he bites.
He goes, I leave them all the time for weeks at a time and they just won't die.
Yeah, and I actually right. She's like, yeah, turtles are good like that. They got a lot of feng shui. He's like, yeah, I only like to keep pets you can eat, and then just walks away. It's like, whoa, wait, what? And that's one of those humor bits. I feel like it just goes over people's heads. I'm like, when I watch it with them, I was like, how did that not crack you up? Laugh right now. I'm gonna beat you. It's just like, oh my God.
You like put their face to the screen. Laugh.
That's a real thing for me. And I have like turned movies off before if people aren't enjoying it to the degree that I did. It's like, what's the fucking point? Why are we here?
I turn it off for texting. Like if you're on your phone while we're watching a movie that I've seen already, I take that as a personal offense. But one of my favorite parts about this scene is, and I didn't notice it the first couple times I watched it, even though like the camera is literally on it, was where he's reading books about the greats like Houdini and Copperfield. And I guess some people we can't talk about anymore thanks to Epstein's list, but like like the concept of like he's trying to be the ultimate master of escape, and like, and it transcends a lot of the ideas in this movie. And when I talk about like the fourth wall break in the beginning of this, it's because it's this interaction that this movie has with the audience that's so crazy, where they are explaining to you, and sometimes ironically, how slashers work, why they do, like, and like, of course I was walking slow. I was trying to, maintain my energy for later kind of shit. And like it,
Yes, I do have a copy of Grey's Anatomy.
yes,
I wouldn't recommend reading it for kicks, but
but there's so much shit like that like they are literally explaining to you and really brilliantly the idea of what a slasher is, and like fundamentally. And that's the craziest part, because again, it's almost shrouded by how much comedy is in this fucking movie.
And it's interesting because it like, again, it is meta and it is kind of played up for jokes, but the writer has even openly said, when he wrote this movie, he fell asleep watching Halloween and he was feeling doubts about his ability as a writer. And he said, falling asleep that night watching Halloween, I thought, man, I wonder if Michael Myers ever felt doubts about being a slasher, like having that as like a career path, and it's like,
I love that.
That was his inspiration for writing this. It's like, I wonder if like Saturday the 14th is like the day after Christmas for Jason. It is like, what is it like if this is the path people choose? And Leslie even says that when he's like, you chose journalism, it's like
I made a choice.
When they put it in this, that like, this is a choice, this is a career path and a life, destiny that these people have chosen to pursue and chase, and a dream that Leslie has. And it's like, there has to be a way to do it and to become like those if you exist in a world where they exist. It just makes sense. It's like someone dreaming of being a rock star or a filmmaker or a doctor or an astronaut. Those things exist. So if Freddie and Michael exist, why couldn't you be like them? So
I kill people.
I kill people. It's what I do.
It's got that. It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it.
Absolutely. So they make it so practical by having him reading like books by Houdini and stuff like that, and it just like it again, that just adds another layer to how they're doing it, showing him like working out, doing his cardio bits, and
killed me.
One of the next
tears.
Dude,
I was in tears.
You gotta run like a freaking gazelle.
Do you know how much cardio I have to do?
But everyone else is running their asses off. Dude, it kills me every time.
He's like kickboxing on the back.
He's like sweating, and it's just, oh my god. He's like, come on, we got work to do. And then they go out, like, do this drive-by stalking, and the way he's like talking about it, and it's like he's like, oh, sorry, that's an industry term, and he's being like so pretentious about it. And you're just like, God, who is this guy? It's wild. But even recognizing in that scene where he's like, oh, those are the jocks, that's your bread and butter right there. Those people don't really run. You pad your numbers with those. And it's like recognizing these stereotypes that are like, not like, no, there's truth behind it. That's like, it's what it is. It's
acknowledging that the stoners are going to be slower. It's fantastic.
Yeah, they don't give much chase, but it's just like, oh my God. And he like freaks out when he's like, oh, did you see that? She sensed me. And I'm like, what?
The virgin sensed me.
This is like, oh my God. And they're like,
that's like no virgin I've ever seen.
Right. And she's like, so is this the girl you've been stalking? He's like, no, I just found her. And it's like, yikes, bro. Like, how many high school girls are you stalking out here, man? This is like a little wacky, but
he's got his own portal like in the fucking school.
And that to me is the source of like true terror with slashers. It's not the supernatural shit for me. It's the fact that serial killers do fucking exist, and they
Yeah.
do plan this shit out and that kind of thing. And that's what's so intriguing about this as a subgenre of horror to me.
Well, it's also
Absolutely.
like it's not off the cuff.
Yeah.
Though. That's the thing about slashers too, is there's a lot of off the cuff. This is a very calculated. This is like someone who has studied under the Mr. Miyagi of murder.
And there's even like dialogue about like how nowadays they've got time to prepare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's kind of like, I think definitely kind of rounds us out as a black comedy. That like when you're watching this and in that scene, like, yeah, it's played up for kicks and there's like jokes about it. He's like eating like gummy bears through the whole scene.
Right.
And it's like, but when you like stop and really think about it, it's like, bro, this is like a real thing. This is something people do and then actually go out and fucking kill somebody. Like it's kind of like crazy to think about that because they're taking something that's very real, very horrific, and they're making it so hilarious. And that's what kind of makes it like even more horrifying. And it's like you're kind of laughing about it, but then it's like, oh God, am I a sick fuck? Like I might be,
Yes.
He's like sitting there painting his nails black in the van.
Yeah, it's like it's so wild, But yeah, it's just interesting seeing it from that perspective because again, it's just like he's like, I can't just sit here and tell you, kind of backtrack it a little bit, but like he's like, I can't sit here and tell you why I do it. There's so many reasons why we do it, but I can show you how. And it just reminds me so much of watching like a one of those shows on the Discovery Channel, like how was it made? And like watching behind the music, like you get to see how these greats make these things and how the inner workings of it. And
yeah, like Nikki Sixx putting a bottle of Jack in his butt and just drinking
yeah,
it
and
from
it's
there.
like, wow, is that how you made Shout at the Devil? This is amazing. So yeah, it's just so well written in that aspect. But moving on, I think one of the next scenes is when we meet
Eugene.
Yeah.
It's
I forgot how early on he's introduced, like pretty early on. Yeah.
The
I
mentor.
love that character. He's so fun.
Yeah, and Jamie was hot.
Oh my God.
I kind of had
acknowledge that. He's like, oh, and Jamie's so hot.
Yeah. He's like walking up to the door. He's like, but
oh my God.
And actually, like, I know this happens like later on for in the movie, but I do want to talk about this real quick with Eugene and Jamie, because my favorite piece of dialogue in this entire movie is between them, because it felt like it just totally flopped what I thought was happening, because they're talking about the idea of the chase the next time, and like, we're back to cardio again. And Leslie is talking to both Eugene and Jamie about it. And obviously Taylor is still there because she hasn't fucking decided to walk away by this point. But Jamie makes the comment, yeah, I was fast, wasn't I? And you would think that it was because she's the final girl. And then Eugene turns around and goes, yeah, I couldn't quite outrun you. And I was just like, was Jamie the slasher the whole time? Like, oh my
dick.
God.
And it makes you wonder. And it's just like, that's what I'm talking about, man. The writing of this, there's so many layers to it, and there's things you don't catch. And I do recommend people watch this 2 or 3 times.
Yeah,
totally.
I feel like
totally
first time, you get it, you enjoy it, but then it's like the second or third time you really start to pick up on stuff you didn't before, especially towards the end, once everything starts to unfold and you really realize what's actually happening. It gets pretty crazy with that. But yeah, I mean, it's with the Eugene character, they kind of bringing up what you were mentioning before. They have someone who was a slasher, is now retired, that has kind of acted as a mentor, if you will, a Mr. Miyagi of murder for Leslie.
The Miyagi of murder.
Played by the late
Miyagi
Scott Wilson. And you know what's funny? I met Scott Wilson at a Horror Hound convention in Cincinnati like fucking 10 something years ago. And we were in the elevator, and I didn't want to like bother him or anything. And he was just like, "Hey, how's it going?" I was like, "Good, good." I was like, "Man, I don't want to bug you, but I just gotta say, I loved you in Behind the Mask, Rise of Leslie Vernon." He's like, "Thank you so much. I loved working on that movie." Because everyone's all about Walking Dead and stuff. But I'm like, bro,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Vernon, you know, it's crazy. And again, because Robert Englund's in this movie,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked with Robert Englund on my first ever movie, Fear Clinic, and that was the first thing I told him when I was in a room with him. I was like, bro, Behind the Mask's like my favorite movie, and he's like, that was one of my favorite movies I've ever worked on.
That's
and I'm like,
amazing.
let's go. You know, so
And
it's
now you're in.
it you know, but you have that type of character in there, and he's you know, talking about like, you know, how he's kind of taken Leslie under his wing and kind of showing him the ropes and teaching him all the ins and outs of this as a
Mhm.
retired slasher. And he's talking about like, you know, oh, you know, back in the day, you know, we'd kill, you know, a group of co-eds and then that was that. You know, now people like Freddie and Jason, you know, they cranked it up to the next level. And when he was talking about that, it kind of made me realize it was an allegory for horror films.
It was.
Yeah.
This is my
because
favorite exchange in the whole movie.
yes,
happens
because
right
he's
here.
talking about like, because the rumor is Eugene is supposed to be the killer from Black Christmas. That's the
Heard.
fan theory.
Oh,
So
okay.
that the way he
Okay.
talks about it, the time period and stuff like that, like the fans think that that's who he is. And he's talking about how when in his day, horror movies, if it was a slasher, you know, you'd get a little body count, you'd fall off the face of the earth. But then when all these bigger franchises came out, bigger body counts, you know, crazier gore, over the top, big, bombastic, and it changed everything, and it did with films. And he's like, now, you know, they've gotten sloppy and they're doing this, and I feel like they're talking about like remakes, and they're talking
Mhm.
about movies like Scream and movies like, you know, probably taking a shot at movies like Hatchet, like realistically.
Mhm.
Those
films that-
motherfuckers.
and they're, you know, and because you know they are, and it's just that is something I only realized within the last like 3 or 4 years of rewatching. Like,
Mhm.
this is totally an allegory for that, you know, and it's like
100%.
and I always knew he was talking about these other slashers, but not
Mhm.
that it was going that step further of being that self-aware of like comparing itself to these other films.
Mhm.
And I just think that was such a clever way of presenting that, because again, if you are existing in a world where those films are real life, of course you would compare it like that. And I absolutely love that.
And taking that a step further, I mean, you were talking about I don't know how to explain why I do what I do, right? This is where Eugene says, well, those boys turned it into an art form. It was about
Yeah.
creating an experience for everybody that was involved. And an art form, I mean, the way that, like, I'm a musician and a writer, John is a musician and a writer and a chef, and we all do, I mean, you do what you do. We all do creative shit. And what you're doing, I mean, when you really like sit with that for a second, you're like, you know, I don't know how to explain it any better than just saying I'm trying to create an experience for somebody else.
Absolutely.
Which is so hilarious because that he says that was a radical change in philosophy. You know, when these guys were coming back like a curse every single year. Sequels. He's talking about sequels.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah.
can't get rid
And
of
he
it.
was angry about it because they
But-
had this was the most brilliant part of that entire scene. I mean, obviously the dialogue was incredible. But my favorite part is Eugene is like sitting there chopping a carrot
with
and
the knife skills, bro.
and it comes back down and it's just like minced. It is minced carrot paste across the fucking the cutting
It's the
board.
sound effect that he does. It goes like, and it's like, holy shit, dude! Like it, dude.
It was like a Mac 10 going off.
Jamie
So
goes, that was
funny.
nice. Go start the grill.
And Leslie's like laughing in the background, and Taylor's like, "Oh my god,
Yeah.
this guy's dangerous." So funny. I
And
love
also,
it.
real quick, we did go over the fact that like when they got there, Jamie was like, I don't know, he's probably in the backyard. I've been busy all day. So
He's in the tank.
Eugene had buried himself in a
It
container
is-
in the backyard to make sure that he could still hold his breath long enough. They get over there.
For
they're like,
days.
oh my God, you said he was here for like a couple hours, not 3 days.
yeah, he was in the sensory deprivation chain. He's like, Tuesday,
Dude.
and he's like, bro,
Which-
it's Thursday.
Which is fucking not what that is. That's an oil drum in the ground.
He's like, what are you doing? And he's like got like a little pillow in there and stuff, and it's just like, oh my god.
He's like
So
Robin
funny.
Williams in Jumanji. What year is it?
Literally that. It was, oh my God, that scene absolutely slays me every time. And there's like, all right, get your feet under you. And they're like, and he's like, oh, oh, so good. Oh,
After
incredible.
dinner, this is also great. Everything with Eugene, I'm nickel and diming these a little bit, but like everything with Eugene, in my opinion, was just slightly elevated above the rest of the movie for me, just because it added the layer of the mentorship to it. When they're talking about the ancillary kills, like, do you go for the librarian? Do you go for the friend? You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know strategically if that makes sense in this context.
He's like, I want to do that. You know, does she have anyone that's close to, like, is there a homeless person that she talks to, you know,
Right,
when she's
right.
like going, and it's just like, what this, and it's like, and again, I always put myself in the shoes of like Taylor and Doug and Todd, and I'm just like, I would think this is a joke. Like, there's no way I would be buying into this
Right.
whole, like, because it's like, how do you feel safe doing it's almost like what we do in the shadows in a way, where it's like, how do you feel safe enough to be among these people without thinking it's a joke? And that, like, clearly they're vampires, but in this, it's like, is this guy just unhinged? Is this a joke? Are we doing this for real? What? But when they start talking about this, I would start really questioning the people I'm associating with, because it's just like, it's getting wild at this point, and
Agreed.
I feel like this is a turning point in the film where it does start to lift off a little bit, because it's right after this when he plants the article
newspaper,
at the library, and that's where it kind of gets real wacky, because Zelda Rubinstein from Poltergeist makes her appearance.
The Regina monologue, as we put it.
The Regina.
The Tangina monologues. This has one of my favorite, just kind of, it's not really a throwaway line, but it's definitely one of those you have to get it, where he's talking about, nowadays a lot of what we do is CGI.
Oh my God.
Absolutely
Dude.
Sent me. And I thought you, as a special effects aficionado,
that is one of my favorite lines. That it's like, again, it is kind of like a little, like, it will go over your head. But he was like, yeah, check that out. She's like, wow, is that like a real? He's like, no, that's you know, I photoshopped it, blah 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 blah. She's like, that's it. And he's like, well, you know, a lot of what we do is CGI. And then it's like a hard cut to the next scene, and that's what kills me about it. It's the line in that hard cut, dude.
Some of this, correct me, like, if you guys felt the same vibe, I got a lot of this is Spinal Tap out of these found footage
Totally.
scenes,
Totally.
and that kind of thing.
Same
so
humor.
Yeah.
Same humor.
Fuck the
Absolutely.
napkin. Hard cut.
And like going into this next scene, like being in the library, like I think my favorite part was the fact that they, like, because Leslie keeps scaring them. And like he pops up and Todd's like,
and he's like, keep it down. And I'm like, bro, you just scared the fuck out of everybody. You're over here like, chilling, it's all right. And it's like, you're scary, dude. Like,
he's like, I know, Daddy.
He's like, oh, thanks.
God. But it up comes my favorite line in the movie, when, you know, it's obviously he's planted this, and his quote unquote survivor girl is going to find this article that kind of connects her to his backstory. And it was the moment where he first alludes to, hey, I'm going to probably kill my first person tonight. And he says, it's getting wet in here tonight. Lace your boots up, kiddies. And I love that, because then right after that, he's like, oh, Paradise Lost. Found it. Puts it back on the shelf. It's like, what the fuck? It's just,
and I
again,
never noticed that before this watch through, was that was Paradise Lost.
Absolutely. And I say that line on every movie set I go work on. The first day that we do a kill scene that's going to require lots of blood and stuff, as I say, lace your boots up, kiddies. We're getting wet in here tonight. And then we get right into it. No, half the people don't get it, and they think I'm just being an idiot, but which I am. But then half the other people get it, are like, Leslie Vernon. And I'm like, hey, we're best friends now. But this is our first really good look at him in the costume. And also kind of like a weird scene as well. because Zelda, who has the creepiest voice in the history of anything ever, goes over the story of how like she has a connection to Leslie that would make him her like illegitimate like great uncle or
Is that
some
your
nonsense.
uncle?
Yeah, yeah. She's like, well, if that's the case, then that would make Leslie. She's like, listen, he's dead, and then he like pops up behind her with the scythe, and she's like, ah! And that first look at the mask, it's like, oh God, what is that? Because up to this point, it's just been kind of blurry in the background. And
She's also 3 feet tall, so he is just like
like
towering
over her, and it's like, oh, and Nathan's not a tall guy. Like I'm 6 foot tall, and he came up to like here to me. So he's like not tall, but he looks larger than life in every scene
That's
he's
why
in
they
in that
got her
costume.
on.
Like, oh my god. So he's like over here, he's like swing, like brings that scythe up. And then we're introduced to Robert Englund's character of Doc Halloran, who's like, enough! Like has that gun.
We
up
got
with-
an Ahab.
I grin
You know,
at
and
thee, thou
starts
grinning
taking shot,
whale.
and he kills Zelda's character. You don't really find out because there's like no blood. She falls out of frame, but nobody ever reacts to her dying.
So she
Okay,
doesn't.
so that
like-
was my question. That was one of the hangups.
So she
Yeah.
doesn't fall out of frame. She just falls over because when you see that shot in between,
Yeah.
she is laying in front of Kelly's feet, and the computer is right behind her, and Kelly's just.
It's so it's weird, and it makes me feel like there was a kill there, but they cut it out, or I don't know, but I know those scenes, to my knowledge, based on what I was seeing, those were some of the last scenes shot for the movie.
Heard.
So it makes me wonder if that got cut out or something. I don't know, but
Okay.
that bit's a little weird, but it is cool seeing Robert Englund out of makeup
Yeah.
as himself playing like a, this protagonist to, a serial killer. So an opposite of what you'd expect him to be doing.
A kind
Yeah,
of
like
And,
zombie
as an
strippers all
Ahab,
over again.
Oh, for real. And he in like this Donald Pleasance, kind of vibe with his outfit and stuff like that, So they go
Oh,
running
it was as
outside.
subtle as a brick.
Oh yeah. They go running outside. Leslie's geeking out. He's like, "Oh, we got an Ahab." And Taylor's like, "Yeah, we got an Ahab." Well, what's an Ahab? And he's like, it's this guy. And she's like,
I don't
Dude,
read.
I does not compute what is happening right now. And they
Dude, I
go
wanted
take
to
off
marry
going.
Taylor in this movie.
I went to
Dude.
school in Texas. I don't know what an Ahab is.
I was like, but I
She's-
love how
she's
you
so great.
enthusiastic you are about what I love. That's adorable to me.
It what I kind of love about that scene specifically is she's kind of been weird up to this point, but now they're like having fun together. They're like
Yeah.
enjoying this whole thing. And that's what kind of does confuse me a little bit as the film goes on, and how she reacts to the killing later. Is it's like, but he killed someone earlier and you
But
didn't
you
like,
saw
give a
him
fuck.
kill the librarian.
But yeah, but it wasn't a problem when he did that. But they go back to Scott Wilson's joint at this point, and they're like, oh, here's the Ahab, here's what this is. And it kind of makes you realize that, like, again, bringing it back into the world of like, if you're a serial killer as a like day job, like that's what you do, having that type of character coming after you is like, that's like a huge honor, because hey, it's like
100%.
all the bet, like Jason has Tommy Jarvis, so it's like, you got to have that, opposite character,
The Joker has
that's
Batman.
absolutely, you need to have that dynamic, and he got it as a newcomer in this age of killers. That would be a really big deal. That's like getting promoted to manager your first year working at a place, and like, you know what I mean? It's just
You're a
it was
fucking god.
it's just like, dude, this is crazy, so it's again, putting yourself in those shoes and like understanding that mentality was just I loved it. That was such a cool thing. And again, seeing Robert Englund in a role like that is just so awesome.
And my favorite part about the celebration is Eugene, being the old mentor, is still trying to keep Leslie on track, make sure that he's ready for what is actually to come, because he has been plotting this for a while, not Eugene, but Leslie has. And he drops I'm a big fan of Easter eggs. I'm a big fan of foreshadowing and stuff like that. And he drops again one of those lines that this movie's been so good at for uh for explaining stuff. Eugene leans in and goes, "So you do have the red herring for her already, right?" And if you haven't seen this movie before, you don't know that we've been red herringed the entire time. There has been a lot of good dialogue, like telling you that it's coming, but like that was like the last, like, okay, you either figured it out by now or you don't. Like, and you're gonna know about that in the actual kill house.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I feel like a lot of people don't pick up on that right away. So when the big twist does come, it's like, oh shit, like this is crazy, you know? So it's I know my first time watching, I didn't see any of that coming, and obviously we'll get to it very soon, but